During our first dance, my husband confessed a secret meant to break me, but I turned the ballroom against him. I should have known something was wrong when Marcus chose our first dance song himself. In the 6 years we'd been together, he'd never once picked the music for anything. Not our anniversary dinners, not our road trips, not even the playlist for his own birthday parties. But 2 weeks before the wedding, he insisted on At Last by Etta James, and when I suggested we might choose something more modern, something more us, he got this strange look in his eyes and said it had to be that song. It just had to be. I thought it was sweet, actually. I thought maybe marriage was already changing him, making him more romantic, more invested in the small, symbolic moments that make a wedding memorable. I had no idea he was planning the most calculated act of cruelty I'd ever witnessed, timed to the exact moment when I'd be most vulnerable, most exposed, most trapped by the eyes of everyone I loved. The wedding itself was perfect until that moment. Spring gardens in full bloom, 200 guests who'd traveled from 8 different states, my grandmother crying during the ceremony because she never thought she'd live to see me married. My best friend Sarah had caught the light just right in all the photos. My dress fit like it had been painted onto my body, and Marcus had even managed to get through his vows without the stammering he'd been so worried about during rehearsal. When we walked into the reception as husband and wife, the applause was thunderous, and I remember thinking that this was it. This was the moment my real life was finally beginning. I was 31 years old, and I'd waited so long for this kind of stability, this kind of love, this kind of future. My father took my hand for our dance, and I could barely see him through my tears of joy. My mother's speech was funny and touching and just embarrassing enough to be perfect. Everything was exactly as I'd imagined it, right down to the way the sunset cast gold across the marble floors of the ballroom. Then Marcus took my hand for our first dance, and as Etta James's voice poured through the speakers, he pulled me close with a grip that was just a little too tight. I smiled up at him, expecting to see my husband looking back at me with love, with promise, with all the tenderness we'd built over 6 years together. Instead, his eyes were cold, and there was something like satisfaction playing at the corners of his mouth. He leaned down to whisper in my ear, and at first I thought he was going to say something romantic, something private meant just for me. But what came out of his mouth made my blood turn to ice in my veins. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice perfectly steady, perfectly calm. "I've been sleeping with your sister for 2 years, since your father's funeral, actually, and she's pregnant, 3 months. We've been waiting for this moment to tell you because we wanted you to have this one perfect day before your whole world fell apart. Consider it our wedding gift." I stopped moving, but Marcus kept swaying, kept forcing me to follow his lead like we were still just a happy couple enjoying our first dance. 200 pairs of eyes were watching us. 200 people were smiling at what they thought was a moment of pure love, and my mind was fragmenting into 1,000 pieces of horror and disbelief. My sister Vanessa was sitting at the head table just 20 feet away, wearing the lavender bridesmaid dress I'd chosen for her, and when I managed to turn my head to look at her, she was staring directly at us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not guilt, not shame, not even triumph, just watching like she was waiting for something specific to happen. I tried to pull away from Marcus, but his hand tightened on my waist and he whispered again, "Don't make a scene. Everyone's watching. Just keep dancing, and when the song ends, You can go fall apart in private like you always do. That's when something inside me snapped, not into pieces, but into focus. Crystal clear, razor sharp focus. Because in that moment, I realized this wasn't spontaneous cruelty. This was planned, calculated. Marcus had chosen this song, this moment, this public setting specifically because he thought it would destroy me completely while I was trapped by social convention, unable to respond, unable to defend myself, forced to just take it and smile and pretend everything was fine until I could escape to some private corner to shatter. He'd weaponized my own wedding against me, used the happiest moment of my life as the stage for my humiliation, and he'd done it with my sister's full cooperation and participation. They'd been planning this, waiting for this, and the pregnancy revelation meant they'd been working toward this specific timeline for months. But here's what Marcus didn't know about me, what maybe nobody really knew about me. I didn't become a senior prosecutor for the district attorney's office by falling apart under pressure. I'd put away rapists and murderers and con artists who tried to intimidate me in courtrooms, who sent threatening letters to my home, who smiled at me like Marcus was smiling at me now while they thought they were getting away with something. And every single one of them had underestimated me right up until the moment I buried them. So instead of crying, instead of running, instead of giving Marcus and Vanessa the broken, humiliated victim they'd clearly been fantasizing about, I smiled. I actually smiled, pulled Marcus closer, and whispered back, "Thank you for telling me. Now keep dancing and keep smiling, because you're about to learn exactly what happens when you try to play games with someone who actually knows how to play." I could feel Marcus stiffen in my arms, could see confusion flicker across his face because this wasn't the reaction he'd expected, wasn't the script he'd written in his head. But he kept dancing because he didn't know what else to do, and I used those final 30 seconds of the song to make some very quick calculations about exactly how I was going to handle this. When Etta James's voice faded and the ballroom erupted in applause, I didn't let go of Marcus's hand. Instead, I walked us directly to the microphone stand that had been set up for speeches and toasts. The DJ looked confused, but handed me the microphone anyway, and the room gradually quieted down as everyone turned to see what I was going to say. My mother was beaming at me from her table. My grandmother had her hands clasped together like I was about to announce something wonderful. And Vanessa had gone very, very pale. "Thank you all so much for being here today," I began, my voice steady and clear and exactly as strong as it needed to be. "It means the world to me and Marcus that you traveled so far to celebrate our love and our commitment to each other. This has truly been the most revealing day of my entire life." I paused, let that word revealing hang in the air for just a moment, and saw Marcus start to realize that something was going very wrong with his plan. In fact, I learned something extraordinary during our first dance just now. My husband of less than 3 hours, decided that the most appropriate time to tell me he's been having an affair with my sister Vanessa for the past 2 years would be while we were surrounded by everyone we love, everyone who traveled here to support us, everyone who gave us gifts and blessings and their precious time. The ballroom went absolutely silent. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. Marcus told me, while we swayed to Etta James, that he and Vanessa have been sleeping together since our father's funeral, which, for those of you who don't remember, was one of the darkest moments of my entire life. And not only that, but Vanessa is apparently pregnant with his child. 3 months pregnant, to be precise. I turned to look at my sister, who is now standing up from her chair, her face a mask of genuine shock, because this wasn't how this was supposed to go. This wasn't the private devastation they'd planned for me. They've been waiting for this moment, planning for this exact day, because they wanted me to have one perfect day before they destroyed my life. They thought today would be a beautiful memory I could look back on before everything turned to ashes. Wasn't that thoughtful? The ballroom had erupted into chaos. Gasps and shouts and people standing up from their chairs. My mother's face draining of all color. My uncle already striding toward Marcus with his fists clenched. But I held up my hand, and something about my demeanor made everyone freeze. Here's what's interesting, though, I continued, my voice cutting through the noise like a blade. About 6 months ago, Marcus asked me to take out a life insurance policy on myself. A big one, $2 million. He said it was about being responsible now that we were getting married, about making sure we were protected. He was very insistent about it, actually. Even helped me fill out all the paperwork, made sure everything was properly filed and that he was the sole beneficiary. At the time, I thought it was sweet that he was thinking about our future together. I watched Marcus's face go from confused to alarmed to absolutely terrified in the span of about 3 seconds. But then little things started happening, I said, pacing now, working the room the way I'd worked hundreds of juries. My brakes failed on the highway. The mechanic said the line had been cut, but we never found out who did it. Someone broke into our apartment, but didn't take anything. Just went through my medications. I got food poisoning 3 times in 2 months, always from meals Marcus had prepared specially for me. And then last month, I found a bottle of antifreeze hidden in the back of Marcus's gym bag, which seemed odd since neither of our cars had needed any in years. And when I checked, the seal had been broken. The color had completely drained from Marcus's face now, and several people in the crowd had pulled out their phones. Now, I'm a prosecutor, so maybe I'm paranoid, maybe I see crimes where there aren't any. But I'm also thorough. So 3 weeks ago, I hired a private investigator. Actually, Detective Morrison, could you stand up? He's here as my guest today. A gray-haired man in a dark suit stood up from a table near the back, and I saw Marcus actually take a step backward. Detective Morrison did some very interesting digging. He found the emails between Marcus and Vanessa, where they discussed how much easier life would be once I was out of the picture and they had $2 million to start their new life together. He found the search history on Marcus's laptop. Lots of questions about untraceable poisons, about staging accidents, about how long it takes for life insurance to pay out in cases of accidental death. He even found the receipt from the hardware store where Marcus bought that antifreeze. Vanessa had started crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body, and Marcus looked like he might actually pass out. So here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice harder now, colder. Detective Morrison is here with several colleagues from the police department who have been waiting very patiently for me to give the signal. Marcus, you are going to be arrested for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Vanessa, you're going to be arrested as an accessory. The district attorney, my boss, actually who's also here as a guest, has already reviewed the evidence and authorized the charges. Everything the detective found has been properly documented and subpoenaed. Your plan didn't just fail. It's going to put you both in prison for a very, very long time. As if choreographed, for plainclothes police officers stood up from various tables around the ballroom and began moving toward Marcus and Vanessa. Marcus actually tried to run. He literally turned and tried to sprint for the exit. But my cousin Jake, who played linebacker in college, tackled him before he made it 5 feet. The ballroom was pandemonium now, people screaming and crying and trying to process what they'd just witnessed. My mother had collapsed into her chair, my grandmother was being fanned by several concerned aunts, and half my cousins were taking videos on their phones that would be all over social media within the hour. But I wasn't done. I walked over to where Marcus was being handcuffed on the marble floor, knelt down beside him so he could see my face clearly, and said quietly enough that only he could hear, "You thought you could break me on my wedding day. You thought you could humiliate me in front of everyone I love, make me look like a fool, destroy me at my most vulnerable moment. But you forgot who you were dealing with. I've spent my entire career putting away people who think they're smarter than everyone else. People who think they can commit the perfect crime. People who underestimate the women they're trying to victimize. You're not special, Marcus. You're just another stupid, arrogant criminal who's going to spend the next 20 years learning exactly how badly you miscalculated." As they dragged him toward the exit, Marcus was screaming that it wasn't what it looked like, that I was crazy, that this was all a misunderstanding. Vanessa was screaming too, something about how I'd always been jealous of her, how I'd ruined her life, how she and Marcus were really in love. The police officers were professional and efficient, getting them both out of the ballroom and into waiting patrol cars while my guests stood around in complete shock. And when the doors finally closed behind them, when the chaos finally started to settle, I walked back to the microphone one last time. "I want to apologize to all of you," I said, and I was surprised to find that my voice was shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off and the full weight of what had just happened was hitting me. "You came here to celebrate a wedding, and instead you witnessed something absolutely terrible. You brought gifts and dressed up and took time away from your families, and I'm so sorry that your kindness and love was repaid with this nightmare." I took a breath, steadied myself. "But I also want to thank you. Thank you for being witnesses to this. Thank you for being here when I needed people around me who actually love me, who actually care about me, who would never dream of treating me the way Marcus and Vanessa did. Your presence here today saved my life in more ways than you know." The ballroom was quiet for a long moment, and then my grandmother started clapping. Just her at first, slow and steady, but then Sarah joined in, and then my uncle, and then everyone was applauding, and some people were crying, and suddenly I was surrounded by people hugging me and telling me how brave I was and how sorry they were. My mother was sobbing, I think from a combination of horror at what Vanessa had done, relief that I was safe, and shock at everything she just witnessed. The wedding planner was having what looked like a mild panic attack in the corner, but the DJ, bless him, made a decision that I'll be grateful for the rest of my life. He started playing music again, something upbeat and defiant, and gradually people started to move, to talk, to process. We didn't leave the reception. I mean, we'd already paid for it, the food was incredible, and I'd be damned if I was going to let Marcus take one more thing from me. So we ate and we drank, and someone gave a toast to my freedom and my survival that got the biggest applause of the night. Sarah's boyfriend, who's a wedding photographer, made sure to document everything, and I knew those photos would be important evidence in the trial. My grandmother cornered me near midnight and told me she'd always thought Marcus was squishy around the eyes, and that she was proud of me for being stronger than anyone in our family had ever been. And when the night finally ended and I went back to my apartment alone, very, very alone, I didn't cry. I poured myself a glass of wine, put on sweatpants, and called my boss to confirm that everything was moving forward with the prosecution. Marcus and Vanessa were both denied bail, Marcus because of the flight risk and the severity of the charges, Vanessa because the evidence showed she'd been actively participating in planning my murder. The trial took 8 months to get to court, and I had to recuse myself from prosecuting, obviously. But I sat in that courtroom every single day and watched as the evidence was laid out piece by piece. The emails, the search histories, the financial records showing Marcus had been in debt from gambling, that he needed money desperately, the testimony from the mechanic who'd examined my car, the toxicology reports showing traces of antifreeze in several food containers from our apartment. Vanessa tried to claim she didn't know about the murder plot, that she just thought they were having an affair, but the emails directly contradicted that lie. Marcus tried to claim I'd fabricated everything because I was a vindictive prosecutor who couldn't handle being cheated on. But the digital forensics destroyed that defense. They were both convicted. Marcus got 25 years for attempted murder, conspiracy, and insurance fraud. Vanessa got 15 years as an accessory and for conspiracy. The judge said in his sentencing statement that the calculation and cruelty of planning to murder someone on their wedding day showed a level of depravity that deserved the maximum sentence possible. When the verdict was read, Marcus actually turned to look at me, and I met his eyes and didn't look away. I wanted him to see that I wasn't broken, that I'd never been broken, that every single thing he'd done to try to destroy me had only made me stronger. The story went viral, obviously. Bride exposes murder plot during wedding reception was on every news site for weeks. I did a few interviews, mostly to encourage other women to trust their instincts when something feels wrong, to document everything, to never assume that someone who claims to love them couldn't possibly want to hurt them. I got thousands of messages from people thanking me for being brave, for fighting back, for showing that victims don't have to be passive or helpless. Some people criticized me for the dramatic reveal at the wedding, said I should have just gone to the police quietly, but honestly, I don't regret it for a second. Marcus wanted to humiliate me publicly, wanted to break me in front of everyone I loved, and instead he got exposed as the pathetic, murderous fraud he really was in front of those same people. There's a certain poetic justice in that. It's been 3 years now. I'm still a prosecutor, still putting away criminals who think they can get away with hurting people. I'm in therapy, working through the trauma of realizing someone I loved and trusted spent 2 years actively planning to kill me. I'm cautious about dating in ways I never was before, but I'm not closed off to the possibility of love. I refuse to let Marcus take that from me. And every year on what would have been my anniversary, I throw a party. Not a sad, bitter party, but a celebration of survival, of strength, of the fact that I'm still here and Marcus is in a cell. My friends come, my family comes, everyone except Vanessa, obviously, and we eat good food and tell stories and remind each other that sometimes the bad guys lose and the good guys win. People ask me sometimes if I ever wonder what would have happened if Marcus hadn't confessed during our first dance, if he'd just kept quiet and continued trying to kill me in secret. And the truth is, I'd already figured it out. I already had the evidence. I'd already been working with Detective Morrison for weeks. The only reason I went through with the wedding at all was because my lawyer advised me that catching Marcus in the act of confessing, with 200 witnesses present, would make the case absolutely airtight. So, in a way, Marcus's cruel little confession was exactly what I needed, just not in the way he intended. The antifreeze is still in an evidence locker somewhere. My wedding dress is in my closet, and sometimes I look at it and remember how beautiful I felt that day, how hopeful, how ready to start my life. And then I remember standing at that microphone, taking my power back, refusing to be the victim Marcus tried to create. That dress represents both the worst and the best of who I am. The woman who was naive enough to trust the wrong person, and the woman who was strong enough to make sure he paid for every single thing he tried to do to her. I don't know if I'll ever get married again. Maybe. Maybe not. But I know this. If I do, I'll be choosing the first dance song myself. And it definitely won't be At Last.